Hi, everybody. It's Liz with Abyss, and we of course have Steven.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
We are back with the Cryptid show that we do every other Thursday night at 6. And tonight we are going to be talking about fairies. So, before we get started, we always like to open the segment to explain a little bit what a cryptid is so that people who don't know can learn. So, Steven, can you tell the fine people what a cryptid is?
A cryptid is a creature or animal or some kind of thing. No, it's basically a creature or some kind of thing that people see that they can't prove exists.
Okay. All right. Give me just a second because I just remembered something. I have to go change a setting, okay? Give me just a second.
Oh, don't need that one.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So, like I said, tonight we're going to be talking about fairies. So, um, luckily, this is something that Stephen already has a good wealth of knowledge on without even having to look up anything. And so, if he did look up anything, it's just an additional, information for us. So, all right, Stephen, go ahead and take it away.
Okay. A fairy is like a basically a supernatural creature or humanoid like being that can be viewed as a spirit of nature or something like that. They can be called fae. They can be called fae folk, fair folk. Um, there's various different spellings of the word fairy. Most people are familiar with the spelling of it as Fairy. Sometimes it's spelled Faeries. And it's predominantly more of a folkloristic being in a lot of British and European oriented peoples, but there's also similar creatures and beings in other areas too.
Okay. What about here in America? Have we had anything like that?
I think there is similar stories among Native Americans of little people or people that live in the woods. And also, when people came here from Ireland and Britain and other areas, they brought their fairy stories and folklore with them. So there are traditions of people giving offerings of fairies here and stuff like that.
Okay. Which isn't that a kind of a pagan practice too, or a Wiccan practice or something like that? Isn't that
Uh, Fairies do play a role in in modern paganism. It plays a role in Wicca, which is a modern pagan religion. So yes,
okay? Puff
and a lot
wedgie.
of other people also connect with fairy beings, um, and stuff like that.
I'm not sure what Dana means by puff wedgies. Is that like another name for a fairy that she might have heard? Maybe.
I don't know. I've never heard of that.
Me neither. But people are starting to come in, so let's say hi to everybody real quick. We got Vicky. She says, "Okay, guys, here eating dinner and watching. I got you shared out." And then Dina says hi. Andrea says hi, and of course Ruben said hi earlier. So,
Hello, everybody.
so you say that they kind of seem like they originate from the UK. One of the places you mentioned was Ireland. Now I know the Irish are pretty superstitious about the fairies. Do you have any information about all that?
Um, and Irish stories about fairies, they're usually called what was the word you said it was pronounced?
Oh,
Sidhe.
oh, let me actually, I'll share that. Remember, we have an image for them. So give me just a second here, everybody. It's actually pronounced she.
Yeah. And
And
according to their lore, like the banshee is one of these fairy-like beings. And in Irish folklore, the she have a connection with Irish deities called the Tuatha De Danann. And basically, in Irish mythology, you have the Tuatha De Danann basically came to Ireland from somewhere else. And before they were there, you had the Fomorians, who they were basically kind of like battling each other. And the Fomorians were driven into the ocean. And then for a while, the Tuatha De Danann were kind of like the rulers of the island. And then later on, when the humans got there, they retreated into the underworld. And so this is kind of similar to the She, who are fairy beings. They dwell under burial mounds. They dwell in the earth in their own little courts and stuff.
okay.
And according to a lot of the mythology, they hate man's iron. So that's why horseshoes and iron stuff repels them.
Oh, okay.
And
Um,
there's also theories that fairies may have been like a prehistoric race of people that were smaller, and then gradually, as this group of people took over, they were driven out.
okay.
But
Because I was going to say, whenever I went to that site, I saw something there about there's two possible origins of it. I only didn't read both of them. I just caught that there's a possibility that they're considered to be fallen angels.
yep, according to Christian mythology, they may be fallen angels, angels that are not exactly fallen, but are kind of like they're on God's bad list, but they're not totally bad. Stuff like that. This is according to Christian mythology. There's also
Okay.
the point of view, like I said, that they are basically deities that when Christianity came along, they were denoted to a lower status.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do they have any fairies? Do they have any relationships or relation to what we call sprites?
I think sprites is like another word for fairies.
Okay. Okay.
There's also a point of view that fairies are basically people that have died.
Okay.
And there's also ideas that they are the pure Christians that died before Christianity emerged. There's ideas that they are in a limbo state, that they're unbaptized babies, and stuff like that too.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Andrea says, I've heard of Puff YG. I'm not sure what YG is said, but I'm not sure what they are. And then Dina said, Puff wedgies, mischievous sprite-like beings.
I
So I
read
guess
somewhere that sprites are usually considered mischievous type spirits. They usually cause trouble. But it's kind of like another word for fairies.
okay. Oh, okay. She's misspelled it. She said it's actually spelled like Pukwuji, maybe. Uh, Pukwuji. I almost wonder if that's a
There's
oh,
also beings called pucks or pukas, uh, and Puck plays a role in Shakespeare's, I think, Midsummer play. He's kind of like
Andrea.
he's a lot of times as kind of like being a fawn-like character, kind of like Pan.
Okay. Um. So you were talking about some of them being like mischievous and stuff like that. Now, did any of them ever play like a role in wars or battles or anything like that?
You have fairies that like the kelpies that are underwater. They will drown people. You have stories of people seeing like ghost lanterns and people following it and then following it to their death, or they get taken into the other world and then they end up waking up out of that world and they've aged tremendously and the world has changed. This is like the Rip Van Winkle story. You have
Oh,
stories like that. And you
okay.
also have stories like fairies that are called red caps, and they basically kill humans and dip their caps in the blood of humans and make them red.
Ooh, okay.
Um,
Um, I
you have
almost wonder, what I was going to say, I couldn't think of the word I was looking for, but the word that they keep trying to say, the pukwuji or something like that, I almost wonder if it's not like Icelandic, that from that area, from Sweden and that sort of thing.
I don't know. I never heard of that one. Wuji?
They keep saying pugwudgie or pukwuji. Remember, I put it up a minute ago from Dina, and you were
I'll,
saying, yeah,
I'll look it up.
puka. I'll put it back up. Okay, so she spelled it PUK-WDJIE.
Oh, that is a small goblin-like creature from Native American folklore, particularly from the cultures that lived in Delaware. So they're
Oh,
talking about Native American stories.
okay. Did you
I
find
didn't.
anything about Native
No, I
American?
didn't. I did not find anything about that.
Okay. Okay. So now I've heard of a historic picture that was supposedly I guess, a girl like posing with
Yes,
fairies. What did you find out about that particular thing? I'll find the image and share that too to everybody.
you want me to just talk about it?
Yeah, you go ahead and talk about it while I get it pulled up.
They are called the Contingly Fairies, and they're basically a series of 5 photographs, and they were taken by 2 little girls. One is named Eletheus Wright, and one of them is named Frances Griffin, and they are cousins. And they lived in Contingly, uh, near Bradford in England. And they took these photos in 1917. And Eletheus was 16 at the time, and Frances was 9. And basically, they claimed that they actually did encounter fairies and spirits, but their parents were kind of saying, "Oh no, you didn't, and you're just making all this up." So then they took those photos, and these photos are hoaxes. They're known hoaxes, and they took these photos and they gave them to their parents to basically say, "Yes, we did, and here's the proof."
Is that them there?
Yes.
Okay.
But later on, um, basically people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle got a hold of these pictures, and he is the writer of Sherlock Holmes. And he was very into spiritualism, and some of the other people that were got their hands on these pictures were in the Theosophical Society. They were into all this kind of spiritual stuff. They were trying to revive older beliefs, and they were very much into this magical stuff. And so they made it very popular. And these girls kind of just went along with the ride. They just kind of were like, "Oh, okay, if you want to believe it, then yeah, yes, this is true." And then later on in the 1980s, they admitted that these photos were cut out cardboard that they got from a book that was called Mary's Gift Book, Princess Mary's Gift Book, and basically they admitted that it was a forgery. A hoax. But the original intention was not really to do that. The original intention was to pull a prank on their parents, kind of. So it was all
Because
really
the parents didn't believe them.
time.
Okay. Okay. So now my question is, because it's all about the folklore aspect or whatever, are there any relation between fairies, gnomes, dwarfs, trolls, things like that?
I think so. They seem to all kind of be creatures that are kind of like in a lineal state. They're kind of like in the physical world, but they're kind of not. They're kind of in their own little world too. That's kind of like hidden from us. And I would understand them as being that.
Okay. Have you heard of any recent sightings of fairies?
Um, there is. Let me see if I can find my notes on. No, that's not it.
While he's looking that up, I was going to say earlier he said that from what he understands, fae is just another word for fairy. That there's not necessarily a class of fairies or something like that, but that it's just
like
another word.
It's like an older word.
So, what were you going to say though? I'm sorry.
Oh, I've heard that in Iceland they have houses that they make for trolls and elves and stuff. And people
Like a hobbit house?
No, like little bitty houses.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hi, Onyx.
Sorry.
So,
I remember watching this show. It was about sleep paralysis. It's called Nightmare. And I don't know if you've ever watched it, Liz. I don't know how reliable it is. But when you're watching it, it's about sleep paralysis. And sometimes it seems like when these people are giving their accounts of it, thank you, babe. It seems like these people actually really believe that, there was a dark man in a room. And some cases, they would talk about going into the woods and seeing this green person. And it looks like in the video, it kind of shows you it looks like a green silhouette moving around. And there's other ones dancing with this thing. So I would consider that to be kind of like a fairy encounter. And I've also been on this podcast where it's about modern encounters, but it seems like to me like these people are deliberately trying to have these experiences kind of like as a spiritual thing.
Okay.
So it's not really necessarily like an encounter, like a ghost encounter or anything.
Okay. So now let me ask you this. When we go into investigations and we find any like activity that might be related to something that a lot of people refer to as an elemental, are fairies elementals or are they different things?
I think they are, but usually elementals are thought of as being associated with certain forces of nature, usually air, earth, fire, and water. And I think in some of the folklore about fairies, it's sometimes hard to say that this one's water, this one's earth, this one's that, because it doesn't always necessarily fit in that category so easily.
Okay, so sometimes fairies can be associated with the elements then.
I know like in Wicca, when you're casting a circle, parts of the circle are associated with, like, north is associated with the gnomes, and this one, the east is associated with symphs, which are like air spirits, and the salamanders are connected with the south, and the undines, which are water spirits, are associated with the west. There's also other variances of this too.
Right. Okay. So, can you tell me what brownies are?
Um, they're like a household spirit that helps you with chores. And from what I read, I think, let me look at my paperwork about it. Huh. They're particularly a part of Scottish and Gaelic and English folklore. And basically, they were like a household spirit, and they would basically help you with household chores. If you angered them because you were disrespectful towards them or you didn't appreciate what they were doing, or you didn't give them a proper offering, which was usually cream or milk or something like that, they could become mad at you, perform tricks on you, and cause trouble. And that's what basically they were. And sometimes they were considered a hobgoblin, which was like a bigger category of spirits.
Okay. I do think we need to address. We do have a particular comment. Earlier, you were talking about people who do this, who have sleep paralysis and night terrors, and the videos that they were showing or whatever. Did you say that those people were intentionally giving themselves night terrors and sleep paralysis,
Oh,
or
I think I was talking about something else.
I
I'm
was gonna say,
talking about a documentary that talks about that, and these people seem to express that what they see they believe is real instead of it just being a product of their mind. Is what I'm
right?
trying to say.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily that somebody was intentionally creating these
Yeah,
issues. It was just
and then the podcast I was talking about is what I was talking about, where these people seem to try to experience it.
right.
Something
Okay.
real too.
Okay. So there are some people who are trying to experience what they experience, but not necessarily trying to start their own sleep paralysis or night terrors. They just want to experience the illusion that the people were having during those moments. Correct. I just want to make sure we
Maybe,
got the right
maybe I'm messing
information.
up. Maybe I'm messing up the way I'm talking about it.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure she's got the answer, to her comment there. But
I was trying to say that in that documentary, what those people
uh-huh.
are talking about, where they saw a green thing in the woods, that
Mhm.
seems like a fairy encounter. But the
Right,
podcast thing is more of a person having a kind of a trippy experience where they are trying to have this experience, whereas the other person isn't trying to have this experience; they're just having it.
okay. So have the experience. So I think that's what we're honing in on. Those who are trying to have the experience, was it the ability to be able to dance with the green thing in the woods, or to induce sleep paralysis and night terrors? What were they trying to accomplish?
I think they're trying to have a fairy encounter.
Okay, that's what we needed to clarify.
Okay.
Okay. And then Vicky said, "Oh my God, send me several brownies to help with the house." Yep,
And I didn't research if the word brownie, like the cake brownie, is related to it or not. I don't know.
right. Um, Ruben says he used to have sleep paralysis because he has sleep apnea, but he had never experienced anything like that.
Oh, okay.
So, um, okay. So, what is this thing about Confessions of Andro Man?
Oh, um, who's talking about that? Oh,
You?
there's also theories that play a role in witchcraft confessions, where these people are being interrogated. One of them was named Andrew Mann, and he was in Scotland. He made confessions where he met the Queen of the Fairies and other fairies and actually had a sexual encounter with her. He also had this spirit that he called Christ Sunday. Um, he seems to say that this is a being that comes from the underworld, that comes as a white stag. And basically, his inquisitors basically associate this with being the devil.
Okay.
Then you also have figures like Isabel Godey. She is also from Scotland. She says that she meets fairies too. She says that she is taught by the devil to put curses on people. She has sex with the devil.
My God.
And she curses people by beating a wash rag on a rock. And she says that she meets the queen of the fairies. She goes into the underworld mounds where they are. She's scared by the fairy bulls, which they have bulls and stuff like that. And she is also being interrogated when this is going on. And there's a lot of theories about why she confessed to the things that she was confessing.
Okay.
Some people believe that she was crazy. Some people think that she was just a teller of tales.
Okay.
Other people believe that she was actually maybe interrogated.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, in case you want to look up those stories, Andro Man is spelled Andro. Man has 2 N's. The other person's name is Isabel Gowdy.
Yeah.
So Isobel. And last name is Gowdi. And Dina, she said to the story you just told, Dina goes, "Oh my," like George Takei.
And among Irish people and Scottish people, you have traditions where people are connecting with the fairies. They're called cunning folk, and they are practicing folk magic traditions. And part of their power is supposedly coming from fairies.
Okay. Okay. So let's see. So we talked about how fairies have, you know, had influences a lot, and it seems like a lot of it kind of comes from influences of Christianity. Most of them seem to be dark, bad things or whatever. So what about good things like healing fairies or something? Somebody who can. Is that a thing?
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
There's stories of fairies healing people. There's stories of fairies doing people's chores and helping them out. And this is also connected with stories of fairies living in people's barns and stuff like that.
Ugh.
And stories of fairies tying knots in people's and hid their hair or in horses' hair and stuff like that.
Okay.
Some people claim that fairies are possibly leftover ancestral spirits
Okay.
that people still honored.
Okay.
But gradually over time, they forgot what they originally were.
Okay. Vicky wants to know what's the reason for a washcloth.
In the Isabel Gaudy story, she would beat it on a rock and it would cause pain and suffering to those that she wanted it to cause pain and suffering to.
Okay. Hello, Leroy. I'm thinking I'm saying that right, Leroy. We have a new viewer from the UK. I wonder if he can shed some insight about fairies in the UK. Let's see. So we have, and then Ruben says, do you think that Irish people might think we are not giving enough respect to the fairies?
I don't
It's
know.
because a lot of times when you hear about, or if you hear of Irish people speaking of fairies, they often refer to them as evil beings, things of the darkness, and not something to be messed with. And so you have to wonder, like, if they look at us when we look at like Tinkerbell, we idolize, fairies here as these twinkling little happy creatures, and that sort of thing. So,
Well, according to like the traditional lore, there's definitely a dark side there. So
right,
these are beings that are not necessarily always helpful, always benevolent to human beings.
right. Okay.
But there's also stories like the Banshee who will warn somebody of their death. because the
Okay.
thought is that they're an ancestral spirit connected with
Okay.
these families. So
So Vicky asked again though, why a washcloth?
I don't know. It's just what she confessed.
Okay. Okay, so somebody named Secret Squirrel came in and said, joking aside, fairies aren't evil, they just really dislike human beings. And Dina says because people suck.
Yes.
So all right. Now, so like a gem. What do you mean? Oh, Jinn. That's Middle East. Um, like that's Middle East. Oh, I don't know what I'm looking for here. Darkness. You know what I mean? Like they think it's a demon or something of some sort. So, huh?
But they hate humans.
Yeah, but I think most things do.
They hate what?
That most things hate humans. Secret Squirrel said the thing is fairies aren't what most people think they are. I'm not sure myself exactly what they are, but you will have seen them in some documentaries. They appear as orbs. I've never heard of that. Now it kind of makes you wonder. Yes, Dina, Jen, that's what he meant. Um, was now you have to wonder like if how often we have seen um orbs and pictures, and maybe they were in fact fairies. I was gonna say, do you want to show them some of your art in those books?
Well,
That's really
it's kind of interesting that you mentioned orbs, because in this one fairy book I have
I see you also.
called Good Fairies, Bad Fairies, and this is by Brian Freud. I don't know how to say his name.
it looks like it. It's backwards to us, but yes, it looks like Freud. No, turning the book on. It's your camera's backward. It's okay though.
Okay. In some of his artwork, he portrays fairy beings as being like orbs too.
Ooh, those are really pretty though.
Of course, this is artwork. And I think he's like the creator of like the movie Labyrinth, or he participated in the creation of it, The Dark Crystal, and stuff like that. It's a very beautiful, very interesting book.
There's a lot of good art in there for sure. He was showing me some of the photos, and it was very pretty. So Secret Squirrel said, I've seen 2 orbs in real life. You cannot catch them. They are kind of like how you, with the rainbow, you can actually get to it. And then Leroy says he's seen 3 UFOs. So
There's some people that say that stories of being abducted by fairies are similar to stories of modern UFO abduction. And some people claim that they're related. Like the person is having a psychological experience, and that in older times they would have been fairies and now they're UFOs.
I never heard of that before. That's new to me. All right. Well, do you have anything else for us? Or are there some pictures?
I wanted to talk about gremlins.
Are they related to fairies?
Yep. Like back in World War One, British Royal Air Force crew and people that were flying planes would say that these beings are causing their planes to malfunction and they're causing problems. And some people, I guess, apparently believed in these beings and saw them. Mm-hmm. Other people were like, my plane's broke. Oh, a gremlin must have gotten it, stuff like that.
Right. Okay. Well, that's kind of neat, though. So I didn't know anything. I just, like I said, I'm one of those people who, thought of fairies as Tinkerbell. And then but then I started watching shows like from Europe, and like I said, that's how I learned more about their ideas of what fairies are, and it was totally, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't see it the same way because, totally different traditions, from one side of the world to the other side of the world. But the only thing I would like to know why we don't have more sightings here. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like a lot of Americans idolize fairies. You'd think that at least they would bring them into existence by thought. It'd be kind of like most other cryptids. Leroy admits to not being abducted.
Neither am I.
So, what do you
I
think
don't
it
know.
is that why maybe we don't have so many sightings over here?
I think it's because it's the same reason we don't have mermaids. You don't have an abundance of mermaid sightings. It's because they become part of literature. They become part of fantasy. You don't have people seeing unicorns.
Right.
I think that's what's happened.
Right. Secret Squirrel said, most people go missing may well be encountering the same beings. True. So Ruben said, working in IT, he can tell you that some people have gremlins.
Every computer they touch breaks.
Oh, he said every computer they touch breaks. Secret Squirrel said, my personal opinion, in those who are never found, I reckon some were given a choice to go with the beings or to remain. I know we're not necessarily talking about UFOs tonight, but Squirrel, I have to say, I wonder the same thing sometimes. I wondered a lot of these cold cases that we have of missing people, if something didn't happen that a lot of us don't believe in, and therefore we don't ever think of that as a possibility,
And if you soggy.
No, they're good.
Okay, and then Dina says some people can just create bad luck. I think she's meaning about the gremlin.
But I think if you're dealing with people missing cases, I think you should stick with. I don't think you should resort to a supernatural thing, because then, later on, they could find evidence for that person, and if you just say, "Oh, they were abducted by aliens," then you kind of give up looking for them.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I wonder about the cases where they did give up, you know what I mean? Because they found no evidence, no trace that this person is still around, that sort of thing. And so that's why I wonder sometimes, if in those particular cases, if there was a supernatural interaction and that's what caused them to just kind of disappear from the face of the earth and nobody can find any trace of them, No, I'm not putting much stock into that. It's just a passing thought that I've had, So just because, it's something that I don't think most people ever consider, So Squirrel says, the sad thing is when someone goes missing and is found deceased, people try to link it to these kinds of things, which most likely is not the case. Correct. Dina says vibration, frequency, and energy. And then Ruben, he's so dismissive of anything paranormal that he would just walk past anything and then not even notice. Yeah, that would be me too. I feel like
I will see something and then I'm like, was my mind fucking with me? Was I asleep and dreaming, or that kind of thing?
I would literally, something can just walk up and slap me in the face and be like, "Did you feel that gust of wind?" 2017, 5 a.m., waiting for the bus. I see a fox take a dump in an empty McFlurry drink. Okay. Um,
I
I'm
don't
not sure
care.
what that's related to. Me neither. I'm wondering if it's just a random thought. Okay. Well, do you have anything else that you want to share about what your findings are on fairies and stuff like that? So,
That's all I
okay.
looked at.
Okay. And then does anybody have any questions about the fairies or anything like that that you might want to ask Stephen before we go ahead and get off? Yeah, I agree with this as well.
I'm not really sure of that because I think if you burn somebody, they would find remain. They would find some kind of remains at some point.
Well, we'd have to consider though if cremation, if they,
Because there's been
well,
cases
cremation, there's nothing
they
left.
catch people on fire. They tried to get rid of the evidence and all that, and then later on down the road, maybe even years later, they get caught. So
Well, so we have to consider though with cremation, the fire is a lot hotter than your typical bonfire, for instance, and they that's usually when the evidence is found is because they just burnt somebody in a regular fire. But the cremation process is a lot hotter and it literally disintegrates everything. Nothing's left behind, you know. But Ruben wants to know if fairies all live in trees.
mm, I think some of them do,
So not all of them, though.
and some of them probably are trees and stuff like that, or they're connected with plants.
Could we consider fairies as being shapeshifters then?
Yep, a lot of stories they are.
Okay. Dina wants to know, do you think it's a case of we believe what we see while others can create what they see in some form? I wonder about that a lot. And some of these other shows that we have talked about or talked to other people and stuff, we had discussed the ability of mass thought, so to speak. If somebody believes in something enough, can we create it? You know what I mean? The idea that something may be real, do we in fact create it because of our thought processes, you know? Hey Joe, we're just about done. I'm ready to eat. I'm hungry. Um and then let's see, Squirrel, there was a case of a guy who burned his wife after dispatching her. And they couldn't find any evidence, but he got convicted due to circumstance. Um okay, and then there was one comment I missed here. I missed. They live in London. I'm thinking he's talking about the fox. I think Vicky
Okay.
asked if it was a fairy fox. You know. Um, yes,
Like
manifesting something into
werewolves.
existence, Ruben. And then Leroy says fairies live in Brighton. We'll have to remember he's in the UK, so not Brighton, Missouri. Um, and then Vicky and Leroy. Oh no, Vicky just asked what are Joe's thoughts on fairies. Dina said, like indigenous people never saw a ship before, so when that came along, they couldn't trust their eyes.
Well, they seen canoes and stuff. I don't know.
Hmm. That's really some deep shit to think about. Like, okay, so
You have cultures. I don't know if Native Americans made big ships, but you have like Polynesian cultures where people are creating big ships and traveling from all the way to Hawaii and places and stuff like that.
and that has
So,
been going on since,
mm-hmm.
you know, before we even started recording history. So, but then you have to wonder, where does the concept come from too? So, where did this idea, you know, happen, you know? Joe says regarding fairies. I don't know, hard to say. Although I did see a really cool video clip of a supposed fairy. Me too, Joe. I was going to mention I saw, um, I think it was paranormal caught on camera, and I believe it was in England somewhere. I'm not 100% sure, but there was these girls outside, and they had caught a supposed fairy in a tree, and dad comes out with a camera and starts recording, and it really did look like a fairy. But there are some insects that actually look like fairies too, you know what I mean, the way that they fly and move and stuff, you know. um
This person discussed seeing a bug that could have been interpreted as a fairy, right, Shaw Woman? Is that what you wrote?
I'm sorry, I'm not there yet. Robbie says fairies wear boots.
Is that Andrea's husband?
Yes. Uh-huh. Okay. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about there, Squirrel. Definitely creating your own outcomes and such. Yes, that I believe in. That's why I kind of wonder about if cryptids can be created through constant thought, you know, manifestation of it. um Dina, I sent her that video. I'm not sure. A sorry case of me be debunking Faye. Okay. My gosh, the comments are coming so quick I can't keep catching them all. Fairies eat on camera. What? Dina, it was like 5 different video clips, but only maybe 1 or 2 looked plausible. Oh, are you talking about the same video that Joe was referring to? Maybe. But I don't know. Anyways, so like, but that particular video that I saw, Dina, the orbs I'm talking about, I've seen were far bigger than any bug that exists on Earth. Oh, the big ones. But anyways, that video I saw on that paranormal show or whatever, like it was pretty convincing, but the way it came out the camera is what makes me think that it wasn't like actually a bug. You know what I mean? Because whenever they tried invading its space, it like turned on them and started flying toward the camera, you know.
Recently, we had an investigation where we thought we witnessed a poltergeist. But then when we showed the video to the shop owner, she had seen it previously on her own cameras, and she pointed out that it was a car's lights reflecting off something that was causing that. So I think with orbs, you have to be kind of careful.
Oh, but remember, we didn't think it was an orb. We actually thought it was a full-on apparition, though.
Because you could see it on this display of cards that were all covered with plastic. You could see it reflecting off that. You could see it on the window, so it wasn't just connected with that. But in the end, it ended up being car lights.
Right. Yeah.
And we're actually glad that she debunked it. We're glad that she pointed out that it wasn't what we thought it was.
Right. Right.
We would be pretty foolish if we were like to present that as
evidence
of something.
Yeah. Okay, and then Andrea gave us some clarification about the boots. It's a Black Sabbath thong. Fairies wear boots. I forgot she told us about that. And Dina said the one with the dad and the 2 kids, boy and girl, looked like a park with some trees. Yes, you know what I'm talking about, that one. And they recorded something flying out of the trees, and they screamed and ran. Yes. Secret Squirrel says, if anyone genuinely wants to actually try and see these orbs, you have to go to a very remote area well away from towns or cities, and preferably into the middle of the forest and spend the night there with no lights on or anything and just watch and listen. It's also very exhilarating, but you need balls of steel to achieve this. Dina, she's like, I've been camping, never seen anything. I wonder, though, if it's locations, too. You know what I mean? So, like here in Missouri, we don't get much of anything, you know, reported sightings of anything. But if we headed to Southwest, you know, White Sands area, you know, that might be a whole different thing, you know. But Okay, so I guess that is it for tonight then. And remember, Monday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will have a special guest on the show. And it's just a regular Abyss show and not the Cryptid show. She said, hell, YouTube made me afraid of the forest even during the day, and I don't want to deal with ticks, so I'm too old for that shit. Anyway, so join us Monday at 6 o'clock. We're going to have a special guest on. She's going to talk about something that I actually posted on our Facebook page to read about preemptively. Look up the house on Hobo Hill in Jefferson City, and that will give you an idea about what's going to be talked about next week. And we look forward to seeing you guys. And I think that Stephen and I will discuss behind the scenes what will be the next Cryptid show. So, all right, guys, everybody have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.